junk. Hey everybody, I am Jen with Jen Hill Organizing,
And I'm Brad with Junk King Toledo.
and welcome to another episode of What the Junk. So happy to have you here with us today, and we're going to talk about a topic that I think has a variety of opinions and definitions. We're going to talk about minimalism.
I like it.
Ooh,
I feel like it's important too. People need to know where we stand with minimalism.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, minimalism, like we said, I think it has like a full spectrum. And in my journey of even reading some books and articles, um, you know, I think my first thing when I think of minimalism, it's a very hard word to say, um, is that like it's some person living on a mattress on the floor and they have like two pairs of shoes and like, three outfits, just like very, very simple life,
Right.
which some people legit do that and it works for them and that's great. But it can be more than that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's definitely kind of that trend of like less stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that is different for everyone. So I think about like for me, it's very much about just getting rid of the stuff that I don't use, right? And not buying or accepting things that I'm not going to use because I'm not going to use them. So
Right.
I don't need them taking up space in my life.
Yeah. So, in that respect, then, I feel like minimalism could be different for every person,
Right.
right? So, there could be 5 million, billion, well, however many people there are on the planet, I don't know. Billions of different opinions of what minimalism is. And I think that that journey can progress in different phases of your life as well, right? So, if you have, kids, maybe minimalism looks something in that phase. Whereas, if you don't have kids or you're an older adult or a younger adult and just starting off, and it could mean different things for what your phases in life is.
Right. No, absolutely. Well, and I think about it. So like my garage, right? So took you out so you could see what a kind of
Brad is a
organized
man
garage
of
is.
many hobbies.
I do. I love my
He
garage.
has hobbies.
But I always make it a point to try to go through my garage regularly and say, okay, like these are things I'm not using, these are things I am using, what I am going to use, how am I going to organize it so it's not taking up too much space. And that is my hobby, right? So it's something I love, something I enjoy, and I'm a sucker for tools when I'm out there and I see some cool tool. But there's definitely times where I may buy the tool because I think I'm going to use it, and then it's been sitting there for 2 years and I don't use it.
Right.
Or pieces of wood. Guys love keeping all the little pieces of wood that you have left from projects,
Carpenters, man. I
right?
I I have one of those at home.
Right? And
And
every once in a while, you just got to clear that stuff out.
you do, and I think anybody who has like that creative side, I think that can be very challenging, um, because we just see this potential in things, right?
Right.
Like, man, someday I can make this cool project with that. Someday is a naughty word. It is one of like the cuss words of organizing. Is the someday, one day, all these hopes and dreams. And while there is a place for that, we also have to be realistic. And yeah, the thing of what, I bought this tool and maybe it didn't actually do what I needed it to do, and so it wasn't the best purchase, and that's fine. And now I just need to let it go. But being able to have that awareness, I mean, is huge.
Right. I think people who do like just regular like crafting and stuff like that too kind of fall into this trap,
Oh yeah,
right?
dude,
Like,
I knit,
right?
and I meet regularly with some other knitter friends who've been knitting and crocheting like way longer than I have, and they're constantly talking about their stash. I mean, any other like knitters and crocheters out there, you know what I'm talking about. And I keep like telling like I don't want to get there. Like I can't. I'm not gonna cross that line. Um, but I also know that yeah, for me, as I mean, I like to knit. I do that, but I'm not as like intense as some of these other people. Like
Right.
I don't practice it as much as some of these other people do. And so having a smaller stash makes sense for me, right? So yeah, the crafting. Ooh, yeah. Actually, not too long ago, maybe, well, gosh, geez, probably about 6 months ago now at this point, because time is crazy. We were like redoing some stuff in the office, and I have a whole like drawers with like crafty
Yeah.
supplies. I was like, ooh, like magnets that were old that, I stole off of other things that were broken, or,
Right.
um, magnet schedules. I was like, oh, I could cut these up and put
Oh
them on.
yeah.
Yeah. And I
Someday.
had to be, I had to be very realistic. I went through those and I was like, you know what? I don't think I've touched half of this stuff since we moved here. And that's been 4 years since we've been in this house. So it was very refreshing to me to be able to go through all of that and really look at what I had. And I forgot about half the stuff that was in there. And I got rid of a lot, but I kept a good amount of things that I now know what's in there, which is great.
Right. Well, and then I think that we all have those things that we're passionate about that we enjoy. And to me, I think one of the areas of minimalism that's important is minimalizing those areas that we don't care about,
Mm,
right? So I I think along the someday line, right? I think people like to stash stuff that they're gonna have for a future house, right? So maybe you're in an apartment right now and you're like, someday when I have a house, so you keep keeping these things that maybe really don't mean that much to you, right? Because someday you're going to have a house that you can put these things in. And then when you actually get that house, half the time you've outgrown those things. You don't really care about those things. You don't have the right place for those things. And so that's where I think it's important really to like think about, okay, like down the road when I have the bigger house, I'll be able to find that stuff later, right?
mm-hmm.
Like I'll be able to find those things. You kind of like get that space, and then the things come along. Maybe you, like thrift shop then because like I need a little table. I need a little something like for this
Right.
space to make this space a usable space for me. Um, I think where I really kind of focus on minimalism was when I became single and I was like, all right, I enjoy my garage time, right? But I do not enjoy all these decorations around my house, right? That was something that like was important to somebody else and was not important to me. So a lot of that stuff went, and then I really kept my house very basic because to me like that was the energy that I was looking for out of my house. I didn't want to spend time dusting knickknacks, right?
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
want to spend
I
time
feel
like kind of
that.
cleaning around things, doing stuff. I just wanted a simple, approach to how my house was. And then in my garage, like I may have a lot of stuff in the garage, but I really use a lot of that stuff regularly, right? So it's about figuring out how to organize that stuff. So it's not necessarily the minimalizing the stuff, but making sure that the stuff that I do have is stuff I'm going to use and it's organized in a way that's going to make it so that I can find it when I do need it.
Right.
Because, you can stash it away all you want, but if you can't find it when you need it, then you'll never use it. And then
Right.
it's still just taking up space someplace.
Right. Exactly. So a couple resources that I've read some books about minimalism that I thoroughly enjoyed and definitely got some different perspectives on. Joshua Becker is a huge author in this topic, and I'm gonna look at my notes because I can't remember exactly which book of his I read. Um, but let's see, The More of Less.
I like it.
Yeah, and his like big revelation came one day when he was working on his garage, and like we, speaking of garages,
Right?
and a neighbor walks by, and as he's like lugging all of this stuff out and sorting through it and getting rid of stuff that's broken, a neighbor I think made some sort of a comment of like, you don't have to keep all that stuff, and to him like that was just like his light bulb moment of like, wait, what do you mean I don't have to just have all of this stuff? And it's like
Right.
those tools or like the lawn equipment that you're like, maybe I'm not a gardener and I don't
Right?
need all of these things. But there's these like preconceived notions like, oh, well, I should have these because I'm a homeowner, or I should have these because I'm a parent, or because I'm a man, or because I'm a woman. And it was just kind of cool that was like his epiphany of like, no, you don't have to.
Right. Well, and I think our interests change too, right? I mean, I think like I remember when I wanted to be a gardener, and that lasted for like one summer,
Yeah,
and then I was like, no. So, but it's hard to let go of that stuff because you paid real money for that, right? So
right.
there's resources that you spent on these things that, um, war. Sometimes it's like that. Like I'm not a gardener, but I want to be a gardener,
Yes,
and if I have this stuff, then
that'll
maybe
help
yeah,
me.
maybe someday I will be the gardener.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and it
haven't given up on gardening.
right.
I'm not good at it though.
Yeah, like I'm good at it until the bugs get it. I'm not good at keeping the bugs off of
I
it.
forget to water things.
Yeah.
That's kind of essential. um, so another book that I read, pause because again, I have to look that up. It was by a Japanese author. So I loved the idea of having a different culture perspective. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's called Goodbye Things by Fumo Sasakai. I don't know. I'm just going to butcher that. We'll put a note in the notes so you don't have to listen to my butcher name pronunciation. But he is definitely more on the like extreme side of things. And it was a journey for him. And he I liked that in his book he broke down like every space in a home and just went through like item by item, like, here's things that you need to look at, here's things you should just get rid of. So it was, again, just like a really cool perspective. Don't think I'm going to be as intense as him.
Right.
But his big thing was he was tired of spending all the time feeling like he had to tidy and clean.
Right.
And he is like, you know what? Like, the less things I have, the less I have to clean them.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, I feel that. But yeah, it was a very interesting read.
Yeah. There's the documentary. I think it's on Netflix, but the minimalism documentary.
Oh, I've not watched that.
It's very good. Yeah, it sounds like you do a lot of reading.
I love to
I
read.
like to watch it, but no, it was, and that's very good. And that, I think, really through there, like he really does a lot of kind of exploring different types of minimalism that I think is great. To the like the person who has like 12 clothing items and lives in a little apartment with, like one chair or whatever, right? Which, and then to the people who like they have stuff, right? But it's more about, kind of really keeping that stuff that like brings them joy and energy, and eliminating those things that, that you're cleaning around that really don't have a meaning to you.
Right.
Or like kind of the process that people have gone through to let go of some things, and downsize. Because I think that's the other piece of this, right? We're always, people will buy a bigger house because they have more stuff, and then they fill that house with stuff, and then they need a bigger house because it's cramped, so then they get a bigger house, but then they fill it with more stuff, and this is like constant evolving piece of life, right?
Yep.
And so then you have to make more money for the bigger house or the more stuff, versus having the space that really like fits within your means, and then really focusing on the stuff that brings you kind of that joy and that energy.
Right.
And then I think the other piece that's sometimes really hard for people when they are getting rid of things is like, you don't want to just throw it in the garbage, right? And so I know, like, I have plenty of garage things that I held on to for a long time because I was like, I don't want to throw all this metal or these good things like in the garbage, right? It may be a tail light that I don't need, but I know that somebody else may need it. And so I think it's really cool, like looking. So like I've sold a lot of that kind of stuff on eBay, and it may not make much money on it. I'm not getting rich. I usually maybe just about break even. I probably made like 50 cents an hour on my actual time.
Right.
But I've shipped like taillights for a Toyota down to Puerto Rico, which was cool.
Oh my
I was like,
gosh,
yeah,
yeah.
somebody in Puerto Rico is gonna put these taillights into their car, and uh, and so I think stuff like that is cool. So I may not. For me, it's not about making a bunch of money on the stuff that's in there, but it's about finding a good place for it, right? So before I started the junk business, I just kind of looked up a scrapper, right? And I just had like a lot of random metal things from demolition derby cars, right? That were just like sitting behind my garage, and I was like, I need to clean this stuff out. But I
Right.
didn't want to just like throw like metal stuff in the garbage. This guy
Right.
was thrilled, right? So he came, he got it, and he recycled it. And so it was really a win-win. Now that I have a junk removal business, it's makes it a lot easier to get rid of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think also sometimes people associate like a lot of cost with that, right? So even if I had paid a company to come in and do all the work for me, hauling all that stuff out behind my garage, it would have cost probably $150, right? And like I was so relieved to have that space back. I
Right.
didn't have to like every day wonder if my
Look at
neighbors
it
were going to
and
complain about a bunch of car parts behind my garage, because I know if I was the neighbor, I would have complained.
right.
But luckily, my neighbors really liked me. But for like $150, that stuff, somebody would
Just
have
done,
cleaned it all
taken
out for
care
me,
of.
and it would have been gone, and everybody's happy. And
Mhm.
so I think that the cost isn't as much as sometimes we think the cost is going to be. And then, so for some people, they may have like an extra couch. They haven't used that couch in forever, right? That's a pretty inexpensive thing to have somebody come and take out of your house for you, right? And a lot of times there's an organization that may need it, that may even come and take it
Mhm.
at no charge, right? If it's in good shape and something that can be reused. So I think
Yeah.
that's, people, they don't want to just throw things out.
Yeah. Which I mean, I think everything that you kind of talked about could be different episodes all on their own.
Oh, and they will
Um,
be. Yeah.
Wink, wink.
Yeah. Stay
Spoiler
tuned.
alert. But yeah, I mean, I think that, again, just to kind of wrap this up, that minimalism, I think, could mean so many different things. So don't be scared by that word. I think it just really means boiling down to what is actually serving you versus you serving it. And, taking away some of your time and joy and peace of mind. Because as soon as it, crosses that line, it's not worth holding on to. So,
Yeah. And I think the big thing is that it means something different to everybody.
absolutely.
So you may, you may hear what we have to say and be like, I don't agree with that. But it doesn't mean that like that minimalism isn't a part of your life and my life. Like, I think it's something that we've all want to grasp in some way, but it means something different to all of us.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Is that a wrap for like,
I think that's a
yeah?
wrap.